Bringing them back. There we go. Is that good? Is that everything okay?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
That's good, right? Everybody got their mics? Everybody mic'd up? Can we test
Yes.
that?
Check. Hello.
Commissioners, please be aware of saying your name before motions or before you speak. Okay? And if you could speak loudly, that would be greatly appreciated. Are we live? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just that one, which is a buffering our neighborhood.
Gotcha.
The blues were so close together, I was like, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the Village of Maywood Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. It is 7:05. Please call the roll.
Chair. Commissioner Dawson,
Here.
Commissioner Avery,
Here.
Commissioner Vallow, Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner Files,
Here.
Commissioner Ratley, and Chairperson Lyra.
Here. Thank you.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we just received the minutes, so we will postpone approval of the minutes to our next scheduled meeting. So we'll open, before we open for public comment, I'm going to hand the floor over to Director of our Community Development for some quick updates.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
You want to just use this one?
I'll be
I think this one. Try it again.
testing.
Yes.
There you go. Good evening, everyone. This evening, before our public hearing, I would like to introduce and bring up our new planner, Amber Simone Forte. She comes to us from the master's program at UIC. She has a lot of really good experience in economic development, more so workforce development. So we're looking forward to her growing with us. As you know, Amber will be leading us in many of our planning initiatives, but first and foremost, she will be before this commission liaison to this particular commission. And without further ado, I bring you Amber Simone Forte. So we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment this evening, please come down and state your name. Unrelated to the moratorium, because we'll, okay. Okay. Without further ado, we'll get started.
So for this particular public hearing, we have with us our zoning consultant, Arista Studges from Camaros. She has assisted us. She actually assisted us with the 2010 zoning update and is back to assist us and work us through the moratorium ordinance 2022-28 of the moratorium businesses. So this is the public hearing, and she will bring forward all of the work that has been done thus far that we'll be looking for your recommendation to forward to the village board. Here you go, Arista.
Before we get started, let's swear all of our witnesses in.
Anyone who thinks they might speak tonight, if you could stand up and raise your right hand.
All right. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and read the public notice in the agenda. Public hearing on case 23-003 to consider the request of the Village of Maywood to amend the text of various sections of the Village of Maywood zoning ordinance and a text and map amendment to create an entertainment overlay district. Some of the proposed text amendments are the result of the study regarding the moratorium on certain businesses contained in the ordinance CO 2022-28. Text amendments to numerous sections subject to the moratorium are proposed, including, but not limited to, changes regarding the location, development, installation, construction, licensing, and operation of barber shops, hair salons, nail shops, live music permits, pop-up retail stores, special event spaces, tobacco shops, and fast food restaurants in the Village of Maywood. Other additional changes are proposed to sections of the zoning ordinances on subjects outside of the moratorium, including but not limited to updates and amendments to Table 8.1, which is commercial districts permitted and special uses, Table 9-1, office parks and manufacturing zoning districts permitted and special uses, Section 11.3, use standards, Table 13.1, off-street parking requirements, and Section 17, which is definitions. Thank you. I'm ready to get started.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm going to walk everybody through the proposed amendments. Just to say, I am recovering from a cold. I have been tested 6 times, including this morning. I am negative. We all forgot that head colds exist in this world. So this is, if I cough, I apologize in advance for that. So I received the materials on the moratorium, and hopefully, I'm not sure. It's just slow. The moratorium, as was just stated, barbershops, hair salons, nail shops, live music permits, pop-up retail, specialty event spaces, tobacco shops, fast food restaurants. And looking over the materials that I received, as well as the content of the moratorium, we can see that there are some things that require both zoning amendments as well as additional or revisions to or additional new permits within the larger village code. From a zoning perspective, what we're looking at a lot of is the uses that are allowed and defining those and creating the appropriate standards and permissions for their locations in order to get to the heart of what the moratorium was looking to control, as well as the entertainment overlay. So these are really divided into these categories. You can see here the first deals, and we'll explain each of these, but just kind of the outline. Personal care establishment, which is things like hair salon, live entertainment, restaurants, including restaurants with drive-thrus to address the fast food issue. Retail goods establishment was something that came up in evaluating everything that was going on in terms of what the moratorium was controlling and the entertainment overlay. Smoke or tobacco shop, including smoking lounges, and then the idea of special event spaces and how they relate to things like the current definition of a banquet hall. So the first, we'll just kind of take them in their logical chunks. The first is the personal care establishment. This is really the establishment that deals with beauty shops, barber shops, tanning salons, massage parlors, nail salons, skincare, cosmetology, microblading, basically everything that's involved in kind of self-care. So what we wanted to do was distinguish these from the current definition of personal services establishment and make them their own definition so that we can place additional controls on them. So what we've done is created this new definition, personal care establishment, that addresses these uses and includes things like self-care establishments, which seem to be something new that's popping up, which is kind of a larger establishment that has spaces divided out for various people to rent in this field, which would be things like nail, hair care, estheticians, and the like. So this would be included as part of this personal care establishment. So with these, what we've said is that in order to address kind of spacing them out so they don't cluster, or to encourage the larger ones that have multi-uses, like a self-care establishment, created the new use standard that says personal care establishments under 2,000 square feet must be 500 feet from any other personal care establishment under 2,000 square feet. And really the intent there is to allow the village to be more flexible in regard to the location of the larger ones, because when you're kind of exceeding that size, you're starting to see them move into more of a spa type environment. And so really that's the kind of breaking point that we used of the 2,000 square feet. Again, using kind of the same parking standard. Should be 1 per 300. I apologize for the error. That's not right. That's not right. It's 1 per 300. It's correct in the document, but PowerPoint was inaccurate. To eliminate some confusion, what we used to have is personal services establishment, which is now, once we've taken out hair care and beauty salons and barbershops, we've now created them as a commercial services establishment. And so it's basically renamed this category because it's been split to try to minimize confusion. This is where you get animal groomers, shoe repair, laundromans, dry cleaners. Those are all kind of grouped into this commercial services establishment. So it's really was split off, and one was renamed a little bit just to keep the confusion down. In addition, we had to do some revisions to the body art establishment definition because that included things like microblading and permanent makeup. So allowing those to happen in a personal care establishment and not consider them, say, a tattoo parlor, which is what body art is. So really that revision there is, again, a clarification of a type of service where that would fall. So as you can see here, this is, you'll see kind of the larger table where everything has been brought in the memorandum. This is pulled out. These are where these uses are currently proposed for the amendments that you see before you tonight. Personal care establishment would be in all of the C districts. Commercial services, again, laundromats, dry cleaners, those would all be within the C districts, and again, it goes into the business industrial park because those also have commercial uses. And then the body art establishment remains, the definition's just been updated, but it remains only as a special use in the C3, so that's not really a change. Commercial services is not really a change either. And again, just pointing out that the requirement of the 2,000 square feet, if you're under that, that's where the spacing has to come into effect. So just kind of a reminder on that one. The next was the live entertainment, and really what we looked at here, and this is something when you see these kind of angry red lines within this PowerPoint, what these are pointing out are different things that need to change within other parts of the village code related to permits, which is not part of a zoning amendment. So we've done a little bit of cleanup to the live entertainment definition, essentially said it is live entertainment, a concert, dance hall, theatrical, cabaret, comedy act, that's what live entertainment is, and continue to allow them within the C2 through the C4 districts as a special use. This is just current. Again, it's cleaning up this definition so that it can work well with the new live entertainment or live music permit that's coming as a different part of the code. In the restaurant use, we know we were looking at the ideas of managing fast food, which is something that a lot of communities struggle with and a lot of communities want to get a handle on. What we've seen is that a restaurant is essentially what we're looking at as a restaurant to be divided out as a restaurant with drive-through. When you have a lot of fast food places happening, they need that drive-through. It's a good percentage of where they make their income, and so the intent there was really to limit fast food by limiting restaurants that have drive-throughs, because the idea of trying to interpret whether a restaurant is healthy food or non-healthy food is very, very subjective and can cause a lot of issues within administration and enforcement. So essentially we've made this division. Restaurants remains as it is. We bring out restaurant drive-through as a separate use with separate permissions, and have created a new standard. So in the C2, when you're looking at the C2, which is really kind of the core commercial, the kind of downtown commercial areas here within Maywood, we've said that they've got to be located 1,000 feet from each other. Again, drive-throughs break up the kind of pedestrian way. They really kind of, there's a lot of traffic going through, so the intent here is to space them out, which in result will end up spacing out the fast food restaurants and limiting their locations as well. And then the parking standard remains 1 per 60 square feet of public area. The other restaurant use that we have, and some of this language gets a little bit clunky, but we wanted to make sure that we really nailed this down, was the idea of video gaming within a full-service restaurant and defining what full service is, which is a little bit easier because it's really looking at people are seated at tables, there's wait staff, people take their orders, they're waited on, and tend to their needs throughout the meal. So essentially saying that only with full-service restaurant can there be video gaming in this use. So we've really looked at that, tried to align it with the current regulations that you have in place now. Really looking at creating this, making sure the permit's updated to reflect this. And again, as a restaurant, bringing in that parking standard of 1 per 60 square feet of public area. So when you, and again, they have standards, the video gaming, again, 500 feet from each other, has to be a full-service restaurant, has to have a permit for video gaming. Those are additional criteria. So as you can see here, in the use table, as we've looked at these, restaurant, again, has been permitted throughout all the districts. We've now pulled out a restaurant with a drive-through, so that's those are the ones that would address some of those fast food issues. Again, making them special in the C2 and then permitted in the other districts. And then again, keeping video gaming with full-service restaurant only within the C3 as a special use. Retail goods establishment was something, as we started to look into this, it's one of the clarifications that came out based on the way that alcohol is handled within different codes within the village. And so we wanted to look at how we regulate tobacco sales, how we regulate alcohol sales, and using what you already have in place in terms of the permits required and the size square footages. So you'll see that retail goods establishment has been divided into 3 different categories. First is retail goods establishment. There's no size limit as long as there's no sale of alcohol or of tobacco. So this would cover kind of a variety of different types of retail goods establishments. The next lines up again with the permit for beer and wine sales. So what we've said is retail establishment that wants to sell beer, wine, or tobacco needs to be a minimum of 3,200 square feet in gross floor area. So essentially they're limited to those types of sales. Again, lines up with the permit. And then finally, the retail goods establishment, sales of liquor, spirits, packaged goods. This needs to be 10,000 square feet in gross floor area. Again, this aligns with the current permits that are in place regarding alcohol sales in other parts of the village code. Again, being over 10,000 square feet, they can sell beer and wine as well. In addition, we understand the desire to limit the sales of tobacco. We did add, as you can see there at the bottom, a new standard for tobacco sales at gas stations. There's currently standards in place for gas stations. This would be a new one. It's really the second sentence there that says the maximum 10% of the total retail floor area can be used to sell tobacco products and smoking paraphernalia. So you can see here, what we've done is really looked at kind of where these different types of retail goods can go. Again, bringing in those square footage limitations. You know, there's starting points for beer and wine at 3,200, for liquor and spirits, a minimum of 10,000. You can see them laid out here on the chart. Very permissive if you're not selling alcohol or tobacco, more limited for the beer and wine and tobacco, and then in particular very limited in the C3 for liquor and spirits, with the minimum of 10,000 square feet. So speaking of tobacco uses, we understand these are new to the code, that they wanted to be brought in and controlled and maintained, so we've added a smoker tobacco shop, really defining what that is, that it specializes in the sale of tobacco and hemp products. We've defined what is a tobacco hemp product. You can see that within the memorandum, as well as smoking paraphernalia. So this is a new use. The idea was to bring in smoke and tobacco shops, define them, and then limit them 500 feet from each other, limit where they can go. Again, I screwed up the parking standard. That's for 300, not 3,000. But one of the things here that we understood was that we would be creating, or the village would like to pursue creating a new permit for smoke or tobacco shops and limiting the amount that could happen to a maximum of 2 licenses. So again, that's something that happens outside of the zoning, but we have noted it here. And related to that would be the smoking lounge, which is where you go to smoke the tobacco products, to smoke the hemp products, hookah lounges, things like that. Define where those are. Again, you have that spacing limitation of 500 feet, and then again, having to come before, having these come before the Cannabis and Tobacco Commission for a permit. A new permit would be needed for these as well, which our understanding was to limit them perhaps to a maximum of 4 licenses within the village. And again, the parking standard there has an extra 0. So in looking at this, what we've essentially said and proposed within the amendments that you see is a smoke or tobacco shop or a smoking lounge would be a special use within the C3. So there is that oversight. Again, that 500-foot separation is there. Permitting is part of that. One of the items that our internal discussions have brought up that we may want to consider is that because they have this approval by the Tobacco Commission, do they necessarily need the special use as well, or should they be permitted subject to getting that approval by the Tobacco Commission, or are both layers of review needed? Currently, as proposed, it's both layers of review. We propose them as a special use, but we did want to pose that question to the Commission to see what your thoughts on that would be. The special event space, we understood that this is probably one of the issues that may have the most need for some more standards to really beef that up. So what we've done is we've revised the current definition of banquet hall really to reflect it being a special event space, and added a number of new standards to really make sure that it functions in that manner, that it really is functioning as an area where you can hold a special event, such as an anniversary, a wedding, a graduation, a fundraiser. So you can see here, new use standards, what we've looked at is a minimum of 3,200 square feet to establish such a use, prohibiting them from locating within a mixed-use building, looking at them being, again, that 500-foot spacing that you've seen throughout in other sections of this presentation that I've made, requiring a kitchen facility so that you can prepare catered food, making sure that the manager is on site during all events. Again, you see these in blue, this note for discussion. Do we want to require on-site security as well, or is the presence of just the manager at the space sufficient enough? Looking at these to not be operated as a regular restaurant. If a restaurant has a banquet room in the back that's open sometimes for special events, but it operates as a restaurant every day, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about not having these become de facto restaurants. And then finally, not charging a general admission fee to get in. So essentially not allowing a special event space to become a de facto concert venue. So essentially, you're not having a gathering where everybody's coming for a fundraiser or everybody is coming to the wedding, but instead somebody's just throwing a party there and then charging for people to come in that are not kind of part of this larger group event. Also, we understand that one of the big issues with these has been parking. So the standard proposed is that all parking must be on site. No off-site parking would be allowed, and no variances would be permitted to the standard. So it really would control that impact on the site where the special event space is to be established. And then hours of operation regulated by the village code. We've added the parking standard here, similar to restaurants, the one space per 60 square feet of public area. And you can see here that we've proposed some revisions to where they would be allowed. So taking them out of the C2 basically as a by right permission, allowing them special in the C3 and special in the C4. So with that, kind of goes into the entertainment overlay, which was the second part of the moratorium that was in place, was to create this entertainment overlay district. And it's intended to allow for the clustering of certain uses to create this kind of vibrant entertainment environment where such is appropriate. And so the idea here is really to allow these over certain areas. I believe it goes along areas with C2 that's along the lake and C2 that's along Washington, correct? That's Lake to Washington. So when you look at those areas that have C2 where this overlay is applied, this overlay would be activated by the C2 district. So when you see the map in a moment, it does overlay other districts. It can't be used on those other districts. It can only be used in conjunction with the C2 district. Essentially, the C2 district applies unless it's modified by this overlay. And this overlay is a use-based overlay. It's really looking at these concentrations of uses. So what you see here are the types of permitted uses proposed are those that are maybe in addition to what is allowed in the C2. So looking at a body art establishment or tattoo parlor as a permitted use, allowing for the smoking lounge as a permitted use. The special event space, which is not allowed within the C2, would be allowed in the entertainment overlay on a C2 parcel, subject to meeting all the conditions. So that's where you see that kind of entertainment clustering together, allowing the video gaming with the full-service restaurant as a special use. And then currently another permission that we wanted to bring to your attention to flag as a discussion item is currently in the C2, the live entertainment is a special use, so it would be allowed in the entertainment overlay. But as it being an entertainment overlay, is their desire to be more permissive and allow it as a permitted use. It does require that live music permit we discussed, but a permit is really, if I meet all the criteria, I get the permit. The special use provides additional layer of review in terms of how the use is established, operates, is cited, all those different aspects of it. So it's an additional layer of control, but this is really a policy decision for the village. In terms of the prohibited uses, what we wanted to do, if you're making this entertainment overlay district, these are kind of dense areas, nice form that's there. We want to make sure that the correct uses are allowed. So we've done some prohibited uses for this overlay district as well. And you can see the two main ones, drive-throughs, restaurants with drive-throughs. Those tend to break up anybody's ability to really safely walk through these areas because of the cars going through drive-throughs. So not allowing those, not allowing liquor packaged goods. So those are those large establishments, 10,000 square feet. And then not allowing for smoke or tobacco shops in the entertainment overlay. So this is really related to the E-entertainment overlay district when it sits upon a C2 district. And this is the map. We did an excerpt so you can see it a little bit more clearly. The polka dot area that you see at the bottom is the one that overlays the entertainment overlay. Again, it applies only to those parcels that are within the C2 pedestrian-oriented commercial. So it's activated by those underlying districts. So where you see it under R5 or some of the residential districts, it's not in effect. It only works when there's C2 underneath. And then finally, based upon kind of looking at the moratorium, looking at these new uses that we're seeking to establish, realizing that within the nonconformities section, this nonconforming use reestablishment waiver could really work against kind of what's trying to happen here and to clean that up. My understanding of this waiver was that it came in during a period when issues were going on with the housing crisis and the market. That time has passed. We're now kind of looking at things fresh. And so, it's a relatively kind of unique provision. So our recommendation is to remove that part of the provision from there and create a more standard non-conforming use, which essentially you can continue to operate unless you're abandoned for 180 days. And as you see here, 365 days for residential uses. We did, what you see here in the bold underline, is add some additional language that talks about kind of how you would determine the abandonment of residential use in order to give more leeway to those non-conforming residential uses that may be in place in certain areas. But we think this makes for a much cleaner non-conforming use section. And with that, happy to take any questions, but it really kind of summarizes everything that was contained within the memorandum of proposed amendments.
Thank you. Next, we will work with our commissioners on their questions. Commissioner Amy, why don't we start at your end?
I just had a question about the boundaries of the entertainment district. Sorry, Commissioner Avery. Could you please just talk more about the limits and how it's established for the entertainment district?
Well, I am going to turn to Angela for some help on this as well. But the idea that boundaries were set kind of looking at where the downtown is, kind of the kind of obvious area, and then understanding that where you've got this, it makes this T-shape, the commercial pedestrian-oriented commercial, could be beneficial in terms of establishing this type of longer entertainment overlay. Blown up like this, it looks like a large area, but kind of when you look at it in the context of all of Maywood, it's really not, it's not big. And I don't know, Angela, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, one of the things that we really looked at here is trying to have a concentration for the entertainment district, right? So a concentration of people and also being able to really start to buffer the residential areas as well. Most of Fifth Avenue are kind of like these mixed-use buildings, but as you get further south on Fifth Avenue towards Quincy, you get more residential uses. So we wanted to make sure that we were kind of buffering from those residential areas as well. Also, when you get a little further north of Lake Street, you get more, Fifth Avenue kind of turns into single family residential. And so we wanted to make sure that we buffered for that as well. So Washington on the south and Lake Street on the north we felt like those were really good buffers to kind of keep that entertainment contained in those areas.
And just to clarify, it only applies to the blue properties, correct? And not in the C2.
The C2 blue
Yeah.
properties, yeah, the screen's probably not the best, but it's
Exactly.
whatever that C2 zoning would be.
So all the multifamily residential
Does not apply.
does not
It
apply.
does not apply, it's an
No.
overlay over C2.
Commissioner, did you have any other questions? Commissioner Dawson.
Commissioner Dawson, I have a question regarding the use of, let's say, a restaurant bar. It seemed like you had stated that it would have to have, you couldn't have off-street parking, you would have to have a specific designated parking as part of it as an attachment. What if you're north of the tracks, you're on Fifth Avenue, south of Lake Street, and you would establish, let's say, a restaurant or a bar in there, and would you need a designated parking area tangential to that location, or because if you specify the idea of the having to have, you couldn't have off-street parking, then that would limit that type of establishment.
It's only for special event space, which is formerly banquet hall.
Okay, so that's
the
what
rest of restaurant bar, the flexibilities you have now, all in they stay. It's
so they could have off-street.
Yes.
Okay.
The special event space, which was your banquet hall, that's the only one that had the parking problems. That's the only one it applies to.
And and you're requiring entirely off-street and no public use of street parking?
Well, right, and that's something that, we want to discuss through the commission as well.
Okay. Wait my turn.
If such a business were to purchase a parcel of land purely for parking, that would just be an additional plus for that establishment, I would assume.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, yeah. I mean,
So if that particular establishment wanted to use their interior space for other than restaurant or a bar for music or something, a venue, it would be periodic and not necessarily continuous, but every now and then. That would eliminate this issue of being a special event within that context.
Yeah, this is an actual special event. If a restaurant wanted to have live music, they would get a live music permit and they could have that. That doesn't apply. This applies to a building specifically being used and we can think of it now as we get used to it. Think of it now, it's a banquet hall. If somebody wants to establish a banquet hall, that's when they need to have all their parking outside.
The one thing I'm a little concerned about is, for instance, Mary Ellis. They don't have parking per se as part of their establishment, and yet that is a banquet hall by definition.
Which would be a special event space.
You have to speak up so you
Which would be a special, that
That would be that's an ongoing special event space.
Right, that would be a special event space.
And so that would not require parking.
Well.
It technically would. It would fall under it. It would be non-conforming in terms of that
Non-conforming.
because it's pre-existing.
Right.
So it can continue. The establishment of a new one would have to have that
I see.
parking.
I see. Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner?
That's it. That's all.
Commissioner Files?
Commissioner Files. So while we're talking about special events, the kitchen facilities, are those, do we have any requirements around those? Like they need to be commercial kitchens approved by the Department of Health, or can it just be I establish my place as a special events and I have a kitchen? So.
Oh, no, so they will, as a part of business licensing, undergo Cook County Public Health inspections.
And does it
And I
have
would
to be full
imagine-
commercial or
Well, I would
like cottage, like There's different levels.
And for the purposes of zoning, we've just said kitchen facilities must include at a minimum cooking appliances such as a stove or oven and a refrigeration appliances. So we haven't gone to the full commercial kitchen.
Free compartment sink. I
Right.
don't think
Right,
need to be
those
a
are
minimum.
things that they would need to pass through Cook County Public Health. But if you want to beef that up, we could
Yeah,
definitely
make
beef
that
that up.
language a little clearer.
Yes, I mean, I'm just thinking add a simple word of commercial kitchen.
Commercial.
Okay, so that's that question. Am I going through my full list?
Yes.
Easy.
You first, and then I'll do mine, and maybe you'll eliminate some of mine.
Maybe I'll come back and piggyback off of yours. Okay, good answer. Okay, so under the restaurant drive-through, how does this limit, for lack of better examples, but how does this eliminate chicken joints and all of that? The reasons that we sort of put the moratorium and we were trying to address certain things, it feels like we sort of skirted over the fast food restaurants in that there are many establishments that are fast food restaurants that we have multiples of that don't do drive-thrus. So where are we accounting for that in this new language?
Well, that's the difficulty, because essentially it's requiring, from a zoning perspective, enforcement to make, because essentially if you're looking at fast food, it's kind of the idea that fast food is unhealthy food. You know, that it's quickly prepared, it's done, it doesn't have kind of the level of healthy food that's available. Usually when you see fast food restaurants being prohibited in other cities. The problem is defining that and enforcing that and administering that and interpreting that. So what we tried to look at was at least we can grab it in one way, which is the way most cities do with the drive-through aspect of it, because when any chains come in, they're looking for, you know, even if it's a small local chain, they're looking for the drive-through because that's where the majority of the income, it could be up to 60% of the income of that establishment makes during the course of the month. Trying to distinguish it, or to say, I mean, the only other way to really distinguish it would be that every other restaurant would need to be a full-service restaurant. And with wait staff, with seating, with that aspect of it, which you can do, but I don't know if that it kind of creates a situation with the restaurants that are out there now. I mean,
And I hear your concerns. To me, it just sounds like we still didn't address that, because I have, and I'm just going to use this again as an example, no disrespect to Sharks, but there are two right by my house. And if I want, I can just look up the district in which I want to put one in, and then there's nothing in here that is precluding me from putting another one near my home to have a third one, and I don't have to have a drive-through, because the one that's on Fifth Avenue doesn't even have a drive-through. So there are establishments that are like that literally take out your drive-through, and you can still, and it's not addressing, in my mind, it's not addressing the issue that we are trying to address. I think health is one notion, because Maywood right now is trying to make a healthy Maywood, and I understand that can be very difficult, and how do we define what health is, because everyone has a different definition of that. But to me, this has not addressed that issue. And the drive-thrus, that's nice, that's great. Maybe no more Burger Kings and McDonald's are going to come our way, but a lot of places don't do drive-thrus anymore.
And we also addressed it by having the location limitation, the minimum of 1,000 feet from any other restaurant or drive-through. So we're limiting them, you know, in that way as well. So you can't have a Sharks, you know, opening next to another Sharks. Now, you know, maybe we want to look at that number. Maybe we want to, you know, lessen it. Maybe.
well, yeah, I mean, it is related to the drive-through. I mean, the issue is from the zoning perspective, it's the use.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant is the restaurant, and so it can't make, if we're looking at sharks, or, we're looking at, it's asking zoning to make a qualitative decision on the function of a use rather than what the use is. And this may be something that is, to get to actually that is outside of the control of the ordinance, because zoning just looks at it as a restaurant. It doesn't send code enforcement to see kind of what the food is that's being made there. That's one of the limitations of zoning. You can't control who the owner of a use is or how any of that operates. So the idea is we just have to regulate it on a use. If it's a restaurant without a drive-through, it could be great. It could be, another Sharks, but zoning can't look at the qualitative part of that. And this may be the wrong vehicle to fully get at that. This may be the start with the drive-through prohibitions, which is kind of a key thing to, like you said, the Burger Kings and McDonald's. But there may be some additional things outside of zoning that need to be undertaken if the idea is to really control what would be fast food.
And what would that be?
I don't know. It's a question that many cities have grappled with. And it's something that, it's really kind of looking at trying to, most of them go with the drive-through. The drive-through is the biggest thing. That's the one that everybody can jump on and control. But the idea is that there is this limitation from a zoning, and I work mainly in zoning. And from that side, it's really hard to get there. Now, are there other things outside of that? I mean, the village can look into that. I'm sure there are others. I'm sure there's many healthy communities out there that have been healthy communities. I mean, people have created healthy community initiatives and started to pursue those. That may be something to do through the way, it could be economic development, courting the types of restaurants that you do want to see, bringing that stuff in, kind of making the environment welcoming for those so that the Sharks doesn't even want to bother. So that's it's a different aspect of this that can't just be handled through zoning.
And I think with that, as this moves forward to the trustees and the mayor, we need to make that clear that this was something outside of, like, we know what the directive was, but this was something outside of that, and so that they'll need to look at other avenues. In what you said, like, I like that, of courting different restaurants. I mean, I think when we're looking at a healthy Maywood, we want to be like other communities where we have some longevity. We have the ability to live life and live it well, that we don't have a overly obese society that's unable to enjoy activities, and everyone comes, like that last meeting, they come and they dump their garbage in Maywood. The businesses that they can't open in their own communities, they open them here. So I'm thinking, Angela, we might want to put something together to let the trustees and the mayor know that there has to be other avenues taken for things of this nature.
And that everything can't be addressed through land use. That's why we're also working through the business regulation as well. But and even on the side of the business regulation, and Michael Mars can speak more to this. There's only so much that we can do to regulate or to restrict a particular type of business without getting ourselves
in more trouble.
Yes.
I get that.
But as I said, one of the things that we could address if you wanted to address the minimum, it's 1,000 square feet, now, do you want to make it a lesser, amount as far as the limitation is concerned?
You mean 1,000? You mean 1,000 feet from one another, right?
From one another, right, exactly.
Yeah,
Right now there it's 1,000 feet.
I would say more. Yeah, we're up to me.
Yeah, I don't think we want to go less because that increases quantity. I think we
And how many blocks is that? Exactly, like roughly? Because it's like not even a quarter mile.
Right.
So it's kind of like Chicago 6 blocks here, so that's about 600 feet a block. So about 6.5 block and a half apart. So essentially what it's doing is preserving a
See,
block.
that's why I would say more. Like doesn't seem enough to me.
Well, no, it would be less. You want it to be less.
No, you want it to be
No, you
more,
want it to be
one
more.
further apart.
Further
Yeah.
apart.
Well, like for instance, where they are now on like Roosevelt Road, so you have McDonald's, and then, well, I guess Sharks wouldn't count, or Chicken Factory wouldn't count in that
If they
regard.
don't, this is strictly with the drive-through, so it'd be the separation between restaurants and drive-throughs.
And why were you saying less?
Oh, because, so right now, like we do with the video gaming, they can't be within 100 feet of each other. So they can't be, like next door, one another. That's 100 feet.
500.
500.
That's how we did it, the video gaming. And the cafes, under the liquor license.
Right.
Yeah. As it stands now, not the new ordinance.
My next question is about the full-service restaurants with video gaming. Do we have anything in here to limit the number of licenses? Or is that just open?
I do not know the answer to that. I know there's a permit that needs to be updated. I don't think there's a limit right now.
There is not, and if there was going to be a limit, that would be something that we would address in the liquor ordinance
Gotcha.
for the full service restaurant.
Okay, and I have one more until I have comments about whatever Commissioner Chief Sir is going to say. Gas stations. So in there, it said that as far as tobacco sale, that we were limiting that to 10% of the floor area.
Retail floor.
Retail floor. So most gas stations don't have that on the retail floor. It's on the wall. And I'm wondering,
Oh, I see what you're saying, because it's behind the counter. So
It's behind the counter, it's,
we could make a clarification in there. We can say retail floor area, no, use it. This includes display of, I'm making this up on the fly. The display of such products for sale located behind the counter. Something like that.
okay, something to minimize it, because, I mean, if you're going to look at it to the letter of it, then it's like, oh, okay, we won't use any square footage, but this whole wall here will
Right.
have it, and then we'll have things dangling from the ceiling. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I think what you would just say is retail floor area also
Wall
includes
space.
any display area or wall space located behind the counters.
Excellent.
I think that's all you need to get there. That's a good catch.
On that same subject, I'm going to jump in. We had discussed including language around healthy foods within the front of the store. Did you still want to?
Yeah, we talked about that briefly, and that was something that was we kind of went into how we can't dictate what they sell. Like, we can't make them, we can't say, you must sell this, in order to sell this. So that's kind of where we, came up against the brick wall as far as that's concerned, the dictating of what products they actually sell.
So since we can't dictate what they can sell, can we dictate what they can't sell?
Yes, well, yeah, that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing here.
I think we had conversation, and I know that I missed one of the meetings, but I think we had conversation around the grocery stores now becoming these like full service convenience stores, and how that's a challenge when we do get a grocery store back in Maywood. Did we discuss anything about limiting what they can sell in that so that it drives business? I know I've just reached into economic and not zoning, but
What's an example?
like groceries, like things that, something other than like you're going in there to get a water or a sports drink or what have you, but like some of them.
The baking aisle.
I just think, I mean, we talked about this at a staff level. I think it's very difficult because convenience stores are a very broad group of stores. I mean, there's the gas station type of ones, there's 7-Eleven type of ones, and there's other miscellaneous type of ones, and it's hard to kind of capture. Not all of them may even carry. I don't know. Have you seen anyone do that, Arista?
I'm kind of trying to follow where this is. Are we talking about what the store just in general displays to the public?
Well, for instance, I think what the commission talked about in the past was requiring fresh fruits and.
Oh, I've never seen anybody require that. No, you can't really. In particular, through zoning, you cannot dictate what they free commerce they can sell what they will. I think one of the things we're seeing when we see these now kind of, and we've added in particular beer, wine, tobacco, you've got to be 3,200 square feet in order to do it. This is how the controls start to fall in. If you've got a small store, and a convenience store is typically significantly smaller than 1,000 square feet. If they can't sell those, then they would be, it's kind of you're starting to sell, you have to sell other things. So by putting in this kind of larger barrier to get there, it stops the kind of corner store from becoming, the place to grab a six-pack and a pack of cigarettes. You really can't do that because it's not big enough, which is what this is getting at. And that's really how it's controlled. The idea, you could do some separate, you're really doing it here already. You're doing what other cities are doing in kind of a different way with the square footage, but you're getting where they're getting, and that's been the way most can control it. But you really can't require them to sell fresh fruit.
Can we provide incentives?
Yeah.
Economically, that's kind of the next level.
Right, so from the zoning perspective, before we get to Commissioner Dawson, I think we need to focus on the tools that are being provided here, which are the spatial limitations and things like that, rather than drilling down on these issues of what a restaurant is selling, what kind of food is it, and the same for the convenience stores. I think that's just too difficult and legally problematic.
Not a problem. Just curious over here.
Yeah, Commissioner Dawson, I just wanted to say, obviously, as a tool, this is outside our jurisdiction, so to speak. The type of tax incentives for selling fresh food, fresh market food, organic food. So, anyways, as far as the tobacco product at gas stations, I think it's almost universal that all tobacco products are behind the counter because of the theft situation. And they won't display it outside that arena, so to speak, as a way of controlling theft in that regard. So.
Yeah, and I think just that's a good clarification to say that retail floor area includes the stuff behind the counter. I think that takes care of the issue.
Have you sometimes seen it defined less as retail floor area and more as like shelf space? So square, the length of shelf space, because if something's on a wall, how do you know how much sales area that is?
That's actually a good idea. The thing, I've seen it done many different ways. I actually think shelf space, in particular, when we're looking at tobacco products, is probably the best way to do it, and to limit it to 10% of total shelf space. And again, including shelf space located behind the counter.
Yeah.
And I think that gets to it. I think that's a good idea.
Not at this time.
Okay. First question, special event spaces. We eliminated them out of the C2 because of the overlay, or as a special use and permitted use?
I will let staff chime in, but I think the idea was because of the impacts of these things was to move them to districts that could handle them more, like the C3 and the C4, the C2 being pedestrian.
Not based on the square feet, and then the off-site, no off-site. mention that we've been discussing is there's been a lot of discussion around adding more limitations on these special event spaces opposed to making it easier or less limitations. And so when we take that into consideration, we would like to have a discussion in regards to allowing the special event spaces to be a permitted use in the entertainment district, along with but they would still have to get a live entertainment permit.
So that actually the special event space, because we're allowing them in the C2, would be allowed in the C2 as a permitted use, so they don't have that special use, because we're saying if you can fit everything in this entertainment district, go ahead and do it. Again, that's why that's no variations to parking is important. I think that the question that Angela is coming to you with was the live entertainment question, and whether, since live entertainment is special in the C2, but we're saying this is an entertainment district, should it still continue to be special in the entertainment overlay, or should it be permitted? I think that was kind of the...
And we would require, or even if your primary use is a live entertainment, i.e. Staring to the Stars as far as performances are concerned, or theatrical performances, or cabarets, or comedy shows, or things like that. If that is your primary use, you would still need to get a special use to have that type of business. Now, if you are a special event space, and you occasionally have someone come in and do a comedy show, or you occasionally have someone come in and do a poetry reading that you have music and things of that sort. This isn't your primary use. Your primary use is a special event venue. Then you would, when you obtain your business license each year, you would also obtain or petition the village for your what we are calling, this is a development, supposed through it, what we are calling a live entertainment permit. So that would be issued if the live entertainment is an accessory use to your primary use.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I'm totally for the live entertainment being a permitted use. I think that makes sense.
In the entertainment district.
Yep. Okay, moving on. I think my only other big concern, because I want to keep things moving, is the spacing between restaurants, tobacco shops, and smoking lounges. I would prefer to increase them.
So you're saying if you have a smoking lounge and a tobacco use, you would prefer, so you wouldn't, so.
In all the spaces, and all the,
I think you're just saying increase all the numbers.
Right.
The numbers from like 500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So you have
all of them. And then,
and that's across the board for each one of each
Right.
business.
yeah.
Is that in the entertainment district as well?
Yes. And then do we want to be specific about under the special events spaces being prohibited in a mixed-use building? Did we want to be specific about residential building, or did you want to just keep it mixed use?
Oh, we're assuming that that would be a residential.
Because it could be office, that's, there's
That
air
would just be
meeting.
straight commercial, mixed use implies residential and commercial.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairperson,
Mhm.
can we go back to that 1,000 square
Yeah.
feet? So in the entertainment district, remember these buildings are clustered together.
Mhm.
So like on First Avenue or on Roosevelt Road, you have a little bit of a spread there. But in the entertainment district, it's meant to be, for lack of a better example, kind of like the downtown Forest Park, the Madison Street.
Right.
So if we start to spread these uses out, we won't have any of the uses.
Right. I agree.
We won't have Madison.
We want to be able to
Yeah, we,
compact them.
that's the whole point.
But I'm just saying the
District.
smoking lounges,
Oh, okay.
just these under the restaurant drive-throughs, the tobacco shop, and the smoking lounge.
Uh-huh.
Those are.
Oh, okay. So the tobacco lounge can't be within 1,000 feet of a smoking lounge or a tobacco, anything with tobacco.
Yeah.
Got it.
What, just to clarify, so are you saying that what Ms. Smith just said was you can't have a tobacco store within a certain number of feet of a tobacco lounge, but you're only talking about
Not lounge, but
distance between tobacco stores,
Tobacco stores.
store and lounge,
and lounges combos, yeah.
not to each other.
Not to each other.
Oh, not to each other. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could have two
Thank you.
restaurants,
Thank you for
right?
clarifying. Let's see, that, as well as video gaming establishments, I think that should be more than 500 feet from each other.
As it pertains to a restaurant,
Right.
a full-service restaurant. So, like the full-service restaurants that have the video gaming in the back, or that should be 1,000 feet.
Or you could just be a restaurant.
How about that?
I mean, really, that's what we want to get.
And then I'm going to move on to parking. So my concern with the overall parking new requirements is within the C2 area and the TOD. I feel like there should be some exceptions. Actually, it'd be better to say, yeah, I feel like there should be some exceptions to these within the C2. And they should be allowed to have some more leeway within that C2.
So there are currently, in your current code that we did, we just looked at, these are kind of just the general parking requirements.
Yeah.
You've got a series of flexibilities for the C2. This looks very familiar to me from 10 years ago. Exempting the first 2,000 square feet in calculation,
Yeah.
counting on-street spaces, a reduction may be granted by the village board. So you've got those flexibilities built in for the C2 already in the existing zoning ordinance.
Okay.
But the overlay, do you want to be more lenient as far as the parking?
Like an art gallery within our C2, I mean, I don't think we should require parking for an art gallery. I mean, that's someone that's walking around and.
Right. So, but for the special event spaces, the new use standards must provide all parking on site.
Well, I actually did put comment that some street parking should be allowed.
Okay.
This is too restrictive. A certain percentage can be public street parking of their total requirement.
For municipal parking.
Or an agreement with a neighbor.
Yeah, we really have a lot of difficulty with that.
Yeah, I think it's too much. Except I'd like to increase the number of parking spaces for payday and title loan agencies to 10 per 1,000 square feet.
But that's not in this, we're
I
not.
know. And that was it. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, so let's get this moving.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
one more thing that staff wanted to bring up for discussion is that layer in regards to tobacco being a permitted use opposed to a special use because of the layer of the tobacco commission, or would this commission prefer for them have to meet or
Twice.
step
Yeah.
in front of both commissions?
What's your feelings, Commission?
Well, the two, because it acts as a filter. Extra layer consideration.
Madam Lodge?
Has that agreed?
Yep.
So keep the layers.
All right, those that had been sworn in, please come up one at a time and state your name.
Hi. I am Danielle Salik. This is my business partner, Shannon Chandler, and we are, so we are planning to open a personal care establishment in Maywood. And this would consist of like smaller business entrepreneurs who would come in and rent space to provide personal care services within the actual facility that we're planning on building out. We put it on a hold only because of the moratorium, because it does consist of hair salons, possible barber shops, nail shops. So we wanted to get this finalized and getting approval before we move forward with putting more money into the build out. So our questions would pretty much fall under the use standards that consist under 11.3 new standards letter T. So I don't know if these questions are specifically for you. Reiterating and confirming the limitations as far as the square footage. That does not apply to any establishments or personal care establishments that exceed 2,000 feet, right?
Okay, couple things. Proposed amendment. Zoning consultant, so don't take me for legal. And I'm happy to answer, but I will say the way that it is proposed, the spacing limitation when they are allowed within a district is only for those under 2,000 square feet in floor area. So if you are bigger than that, that spacing between doesn't apply. The way this is proposed.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we just wanted to confirm that. And then as far as the processes to obtain like business licenses for the small entrepreneurs who come in, how does that work? Is that a process that would be applied in this use standard, or is that something that comes from the village of Maywood where you guys would go through certain steps to approve it?
Right, so what you will go through is, first you come and you have your zoning review. You had a zoning review already. Now that this moratorium is moving forward, depending, remember this is the proposed, these are the proposed use standards. They will still have to go before the board, and the business regulations will also go before the board. Once all of that passes, which we have slated June 13th to have the full ordinance in staff's hands for us to start to administer. So once that passes, then you would come in, you would meet with Michelle, go through the zoning review, and then start the process for your business license. And the businesses that would be a part of your self-care facility would start the process for their business licenses.
So we would go through the process, and then they would have to go through the same process as well to get approved.
So the businesses.
So I'm assuming that I don't know if there should be like verbiage or if there will be verbiage for them, like if they're saying that they're coming and they want to establish renting a suite, that it would not apply to them as far as the 2,000. Yeah,
No, because you've already established over 2,000 square feet.
So it would just fall under us.
Right, it would fall under your, your business.
Okay, but they would have their own business license through the Village of Maywood.
Exactly, exactly. But that business license would not be based on 2,000 square feet.
Got it. Okay.
And
And
then
then
the limitation of the 500 feet, you know, from each barber, they're all within.
okay, so
Yeah.
that's
Right. Once you hit that 2,000 square feet, it only applies to barbershops, beauty salons, and things like that that are under 2,000 square feet.
okay.
Yeah, it's like a remember that you are the business. They are working for you, they're just licensed.
Got it. And then another question is, as far as other establishments that are over 2,000, will there be any type of verbiage to limit, like limitations for any establishments that's similar to what they're doing? How far apart would it be? Would it be in here, or is it something that you guys establish like as a first come, first served? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, we don't have any limitations on those business licenses, you know, and we didn't put any limitations on, you know, on the distance from
Okay.
one another.
But are you asking for us to
We're
consider to put
asking
distance between?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry, it's, you know, sure, so.
Yeah, I can see where that would be, yeah.
We have a lot of barbershops and beauty shops all clustered in the same
Right.
area.
But I think that we had a conversation
Yeah, I
about
think
that
we
as
did.
well, when we were talking about
Yeah.
wanting to create almost.
Right, and that's what we did.
centers.
And that's what we did. We
I know, but
created
she's
that by
saying
2,000
the one
square feet.
over 2,000 square feet, that there be a limit of how many there are, or how far apart they are.
That would be up to you guys, but once again, we're getting into, because I believe it was Commissioner Dawson that brought up as far as market and free market and letting people do what they do. It's not,
Okay. So it's in later.
yes.
Okay. Well, we appreciate all you guys' time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Precious Brown. I'm the owner of Precious Designs here in Maywood already, down here on Fifth Avenue. As I've spoken to a couple of you guys before, I'm just looking to expand on what I actively already have. So what that consists of with me is, I don't know if you guys want to put it as I've been listening to you guys, that that would be considered maybe a multi-use for myself, or business-wise, because it would be over the 2,000 square feet, but I have a few things that's within the building that it will be active as businesses, such as, like I was explaining, like retail space, such as massage space, spa space, things of that sort, as well as suite space for different businesses, not just beauty, but as I was explaining before, I deal with hair care. So I have wellness, scalps, and cancer patients, different things like that. So I'll have other things that's associated. So my main concern and question would be when I'm looking and dealing with this here in Maywood, where would I should say, fall into? Do I have a criteria, I should say, I should be checking into a particular zoning space I would be? Or would it just be okay to be a part of this entertainment district that you guys are putting out, because it's a mixed use. So, and it does have a little bit of all three, if that makes sense. As well as, what was my did hear you guys say about different places, but it didn't have a particular standard to it. So I just want to make sure that I would still fall under the criteria of personal usage, personal care space, and I would still be okay. That's my concern.
So just to clarify, you're asking about personal care space criteria for a health, beauty, and wellness type center.
Correct. So it's like center space for having multiple things in it, and just making sure that I'll still be in the same zoning criteria that you guys are requesting, which is one of my main questions.
Will you be over 2,000 square feet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that would be along the same lines. It would, be personal care.
And you're permitted in all the commercial zoning districts.
Right.
You're permitted use within all the commercial zoning districts.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure. Outside of that, you guys kind of answered the question about as far as the licensing with that. Parking. I know, being here in Maywood, you guys, that's one of the big things that you guys have about parking in the locations. And with you're creating the space that you are creating, I believe I did hear that we didn't have because it wouldn't be considered as, like you said, special event space where I had to have my own particular parking. Street parking would still be permitted and okay for something of the sort of space. Okay, that's really my main concern. Just making sure I would stay still in the zoning of the parking, and I didn't have to try to find another location for people to park. I should try to.
There'll be parking requirements, but it wouldn't be for a special event. It would be the same as.
Okay, that's what I'm making sure.
Right.
So there'll still be parking space requirements.
Right, one space per 300.
I wrote that in. Yeah. I think that was pretty much mine. Outside of, did you guys? I know in the area that you guys are putting this entertainment district in, we're limited into what sizing of the spaces that we actively have in this space. Like you said, up and down Madison, we got a lot of multi-use spaces. We have somewhat single families, so a lot of them are buildings that have apartments and different things. And then we have some that just are open. Can someone point in a direction of which way we would actually be in?
You mean like particular
Space, yeah, space-wise, like buildings.
I would suggest you get with Michelle, and she can guide you in that.
She can take you through that.
Other than the ones that I had already spoken to you about.
Well, we have additional spaces that
We can.
are available as other businesses turnover or.
But that was really my main concern. I just wanted to make sure that for what size that I'm looking for, as well as the business and employment that I'm looking to bring, that I do stay in the zoning and the proper space for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes. And I would have to order pledge to be
Tell the truth, the whole truth, and only with the truth.
truthful in my testimony. As Michael Rogers.
Sure.
Okay. So basically, I want to just offer some perspective, and hopefully some of these things you've thought about. I do understand that your focus is on the land use, but that does mean that economics and other parts of it matter, right? So we didn't really get into a lot of charts and graphs and statistics and those kinds of things. Standpoint and background, I've been a developer for more than 30 years and very, very successful companies. In addition to being one of the former trustee here. Having an understanding of unintended consequences is something that we really need to be keenly aware of, right? And a lot of what I'm saying is just to get it in the record since I'm here. take it that these are going to be finding the facts and translated, and that the trustees will also see that. Businesses that are successful for a reason, right? It doesn't accidentally happen. Drive-throughs, in particular, I would say, if you look at some statistics, you will probably see that some of the most sustained, successful businesses within Maywood are those that do have drive-throughs, right? So I would say be very, very careful about that, right? I don't think it's overrun, but some folks might. But take a look at that, because when you do have less of those businesses, your sales tax, your real estate taxes, and the other economics that come with those, you don't get it. And
unless another business is in there.
Well, but I mean, what I'm saying is you've gotten it. There's proof of it, right? And Walgreens also has it's sustained. It's been here. It has a drive-through. It doesn't sell food, which doesn't get called fast food or whatever terms different people use. But those are important in their anchors. Here's what I know is you get labeled, whether you hear it or know it, you get labeled within the industry about how business friendly you are. Take that into account. Both trustees and in this board. Take that into account, because nobody is ever going to tell you. But the buzz will be very restrictive. Potentially. I'm saying these are some of the things that you hear. That it's too restrictive, or it's too hard to get permits, or even the things that have brought success, running into moratoriums. So keep that in mind, because if that buzz gets out there, it takes decades to have it go away. I mean, I was here when we had opportunity for a bank, and it didn't make it. The buzz that you don't all hear is very, very, it's not living. It takes a long time, because they all talk. Developers all talk. When you have a large, successful chain, it's a bellwether for the industry. It tells people, follow them, because they do their homework, and they know whether or not people are likely to spend money, particularly when it comes to certain corridors. Like there's a tendency, and Maywood isn't the only, there's a tendency to look at a corridor as your village. Well, Roosevelt Road is Roosevelt Road. It goes almost all the way out to Ida. So we got 9 blocks of it here, but it's really more about being Roosevelt Road than it is about being the Maywood. First Avenue, we're not careful with how that is managed and how it's been managed. The only thing you can do is drive through and Cherry Street. If there's not places to go and stop, it does not lend itself to a lot of those. You've got forest preserves, schools, and residences. Those are never going to be places that bring in the revenue that helps to lower taxes and bring people into your town. So the very limited places that you have, where you do have a stretch that can happen, which is pretty much right around Lake Street, or down by Madison or down by Roosevelt. That's the only place on First Avenue that you have any economic development opportunity from the standpoint of sales and those kinds of things. One comes, another one comes, the next thing you know, you've got enough to make a vibrant zone. And I think that's ultimately what people want to do, is have vibrant zones. But you really got to understand what's happening when if it gets too restricted. So that hopefully that can be translated into whatever it is that you need to do from a land use perspective, and the trustees will do the same. And you get rewarded. I can just tell you that even competitors would rather have 3 or 4 competitors right next to you. So the whole thing about not having 2 or 3 drive-through restaurants and those kind of things close to each other, what it does is it spreads that out. That I don't know that gets you what you thought you wanted to get.
We're not doing it for competition.
Just like, well, when we say we, it almost sounds like it's on the other side. So hopefully it's being looked at as that you're hearing testimony, decisions are being made, based on
We're
that.
having a public hearing.
Yeah, so when we say we, I'm part of it, even though I'm not on the board technically, but I pay the taxes and I'm a part of that. So, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
just be careful. And make sure that the thoroughfares are places that people from outside, Maywood doesn't really want to be a self-sustained community where you can only survive if you have people from Maywood spending dollars. You gotta have a lot of people spending dollars that are not from there. Like a Rosemont, right? Almost nobody in Rosemont is spending the dollars. All the dollars are coming from somewhere. That's what makes it a vibrant town. So Roosevelt Road, First Avenue, Lake Street, people are gonna come through here. We need to have all the reason in the world to stop and spend some money. And, not tear up things or those kinds of things. So yes, you do have to manage that. But I hope that that's factored into all of the things that I'm seeing here and the next steps within that mechanism. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Go ahead.
Good evening to you all.
Please give your name, raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee.
Just wanted to come this evening. I'm happy that I came, actually, because I received a ton of information and a lot of clarity as well. One of the concerns I have, just hearing tonight, again, looking at the map when I seen it come before me, is in regards to the, I guess, what I would consider the additional red tape. I am, compassionate about, of course, the title of your neighborhood. When I look at an area and it's like it's nothing but blight, and I'm talking about from 5th and Quincy to Madison Street. And so for me, like, okay, so, what are we doing to this particular area? And looking at how long, it has been blighted, especially like one side of it, there's like nothing happening on like one side. And so any additional, for me, like red tape or anything that will further prevent anything from happening or any additional economic opportunities from happening in that particular area, for me, I'm highly concerned about anything that would prevent businesses from being going in that particular area. So I know we talked about the entertainment district being from Lake Street to Washington. When you really look at like the opportunities that are like within that particular corridor, there's not really a lot of opportunities for space. But if we take a look at Quincy,
It's only to Walnut.
I'm sorry?
It's only to Walnut. It's not to Washington.
To Walnut. But when you take a look at Quincy, that Quincy corridor from Quincy to Madison Street, there is a lot of opportunity in that particular area for entertainment or all type of different venues in that particular area. So for me, as it relates to creating this separate area, because and you look at like different communities like Forest Park, Oak Park, there are different sections where you can get entertainment from, whether it's Madison Street, Roosevelt Road, Randolph Street, it's different sections where you can be able to go around to be able to get really like what you're looking for as far as like entertainment is concerned. So for me, that was one of the concerns that I had looking at the map. It's really like that Quincy to Madison corridor where there is a lot of light in a lot of buildings with still great potential, with the right investment and the right developers coming to the table to really help develop that area. So that was really my only concern. And now, of course, I have the opportunity to.
So is your concern that it's not in the entertainment zone, or that
I wanted to correct. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking for clarity.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, I want that area to be
Within the entertainment zone.
within the entertainment zone because of the different space in the buildings that exist there, and there's land that's available adjacent to the Perry Path, both where the old sound stage used to be. That building is coming down, so that's going to be additional opportunity. Then across the street from that, again, adjacent from the Perry Path, someone can stop and listen to some live music or do whatever, and, to be able to stop, stay, and spin here in the village of Maywood. So that was my only concern about that particular area.
Yeah, that's
Thank
a
you.
good recommendation. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to call the meeting because we're going to lose the quorum in a moment because I have to go. But we will continue. Let's come up with a date to continue this. Angela, do you have anything in mind? What?
Yeah, we should do it maybe 2 weeks or something less than
Or less.
next month.
Right.
So if we can kind of pull forward.
Unless you want to take a quick vote.
So we're here.
Okay, do it. I'm packing up.
Does anyone else want to speak? That's good.
So are we saying next week, or are we saying 2 weeks? What's the vote?
Or do you want
And
to?
what's
Oh, no,
the...
she's saying.
I'm saying, do you want to vote right now?
Oh.
Or do you want to discuss?
Do you need to
Oh, I
discuss
wanted
first?
to discuss one.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought it was unusual. You were agreeing to that. Do you have a date to continue to?
Yeah, so do you know, Angela, about conflicts with the room or anything like that?
Let's see. So tomorrow,
I'll fly back tomorrow.
so okay, conflicts with the room, of course. Tuesday, May 16th would be a conflict. With the board, but let's try to.
One of those swearing in.
That's on the 30th of May. Oh,
I thought it was.
wait, for the swearing in, yeah, they moved it to the 30th.
30th.
Oh, the 30th of May, right? Right, yeah.
How about May 9th?
That works. I think that's our alternative regular meeting days.
But if we're continuing, what are we looking like as far as our notice is concerned?
We don't need any additional.
We can just continue.
As long as you're picking up a date.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so this meeting will be continued on May 9th. I would like a motion to adjourn.
Well, let's vote on the continuing
Oh.
first. Motion to continue the public hearing to May 9th.
Aye.
You have to make a motion.
A motion to move this to May 9th.
Second?
A second?
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Dawson?
Aye.
Trustee Avery?
Aye.
Trustee Campbell? Trustee Ballo?
Commission.
Commissioner, I'm sorry. Commissioner Ballo? Commissioner Campbell? Commissioner Files?
Aye.
Commissioner Radley?
Commissioner Lira. Aye.
And Commissioner Leary?
So anyone who wants to return on May 9th, will take additional public comment and have further discussion. 7 p.m. Mr. Simpson.
Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, everyone, for coming.
How do you do it?